Good evening. My name's Chris Hamilton. I sing in a choir. Over these next few YouTube videos, I'm going to teach you how to easily make your own teaching mp3 files for your choir, for your part, for a concert coming up. Now, often you can get excellent resources out there on YouTube and on the net, and indeed your choir master may have downloaded many good teaching resources for you to learn parts, learn the lyrics, learn the melodies, improve your singing, and we don't want to duplicate that. But often your concert may have obscure pieces. They may be in a different key, the arrangement may be different, the tempo may be different, intonations and various other subtleties may be different. So you want to make your own mp3 files for yourself and for your fellow altos, your fellow tenors, etc. And importantly, you want to string them together into the form of your next concert. So you want 10 or 12 or 15 mp3 files all merged together in one, so that you can, when you're on the move, walking to work, driving to work, you can listen to an entire concert with the alto part in one ear and the accompaniment in the other. Plus or minus your music, you can be sitting down looking at music, but preferably not looking at the music while you're driving. So this is a huge advantage because you don't have to be sat at your computer or sat at your tablet endlessly opening up separate mp3 files. So that's the name of the game. I've found over the last 5 years that it actually helps you to learn a lot quicker. Your other fellow choristers are grateful, or usually, not always. And actually, you can be surprised. You can produce a reasonable quality teaching file, and you can do a lot to improve your voice. You can do a lot to improve tempo, timing, and even sometimes out of tune stuff. So do not despair, be patient, and you will be able to do this with some very minimal equipment. So what do you need? You need a basic laptop, Mac or a PC. Laptop's better than a tower, but you can do it with a tower. You need some free software. There's 2 pieces of free software that I'm going to show you in a minute how to download and install. You need time and patience. You need a quiet space. You don't want to have a lot of external noise, so ideally a lounge or a bedroom with a little bit of acoustic softening in it, curtains and soft furnishings, etc., etc. You need earphones or earbuds that will isolate the sound of the accompaniment that you're listening to as you sing the teaching part from your teaching part. You don't want bleeding, or at least not too much. But having said all that, let's dive in. So let's open our favorite browser. Let's find Reaper download. So just go to the home website of Reaper, double click on that, and you come to the opportunity to download the appropriate version for your operating system. So typically you'll click on the 64-bit one, don't bother with 86 or 32 or the Mac system, and download it. And in your downloads folder you'll see an exe file, and you just double click on that and follow all the instructions for the default install. It installs very quickly, it's free, and it's a very robust and easy program to use, although it's big and powerful. So that's the first set of software you'll need. It's called a DAW, a Digital Audio Workstation, and that's just a fancy name for software that records audio files and plays them back and enables you to edit them inside your operating system. Now, a similar thing can be done with the built-in recorder system in your computer. So in Windows, that's called Sound Recorder. And you can think of a DAW just like a very fancy version of the sound recorder. And we might take this opportunity to just check that our microphone, our headphones, and all our Windows or Mac drivers to enable us to record and play back are all functioning. So open up your sound recorder, and just for the heck of it, let's try and record. And it's recording my voice. So that tells us that things look pretty good. Your sound levels need to be checked, and the playback levels need to be checked, and typically you do that in your device settings. So in Windows 10 and 11 it's called system sound settings, and you just make sure that you've got headphones that work and you've got a microphone that works. So typically you just click on your microphone for your computer and you're good to go. It normally works very, very well. And if that's all functioning well with Sound Recorder, and you're getting a sound recording recorded and played back, then that augurs well that Reaper will also work very well. So that's software number one that we need. Software number two is a device called ASIO for All. Now it's a device driver, it's just software that is much, much better than the native Windows and native Mac software for recording, processing and playing back audio. So you double click on download ASIO for All, and that comes to the website, the home site of ASIO for All, which is again free, and you double click on the English version. Don't be tempted by any of the various ads and other spurious downloads that are very busy on this website. So just double click on the English version and you will download a very small file, the ASIO for All installer. So again, same as with Reaper, you just double click on that and install it using all the defaults that come with that package. Now, at this stage, you've got nearly all you need. Just check that you've got a mic set up. It's nice to have a little USB mic. Just a cheapie will do, but at a pinch you can use the built-in speaker on your laptop. Now, why don't we see if we can actually get Reaper going? So go to the icon for Reaper, double click it, and it'll open up typically on your first install to a licensing option. So you can purchase the Reaper key. It's about 60 quid and it's extremely good value. Most other DAWs are hundreds and hundreds of pounds, but you don't have to. You can use it indefinitely. You have to click a few times on this little box when it comes up and press still evaluating, and you can use a completely uninhibited version of Reaper. No restrictions, no nothings, for as long as you like. But typically if you like Reaper after 6 months, 4 to 6 months, I would definitely buy it because it will have lots of other uses for you other than just this. So you just click on still evaluating and that leaves you with the open work palette or the open screen of Reaper. Now this grey area is where the files record. This is where we put tracks. You've heard of a 32 or a 64 track recording studio. Well, we can put as many tracks as we want virtually here in Reaper just by double clicking left mouse on this black area, and there you have it, first track. Let's drag it down and make it nice and big so we can see everything clearly, and we'll call this track accompaniment because this is where we're going to put the choir or the orchestra or the piano that's backing us when we make this teaching track. So there we have it. There's the accompaniment track. Other important areas in Reaper are the transport bar down here. Here is play, here's pause, here's stop, fast forward, fast rewind, and record. So it's just like the old tape recorder. So now let's see if we can get an MP3 or a WAV file into here. Now it may well be that your other choir members or your choir master might have emailed you an MP3 file, or he might have put it on Dropbox, or you might have downloaded it from somewhere on the net, but you've got an MP3 file sitting somewhere in a file that you've labelled however you want, or you might have just downloaded it from Dropbox into Downloads. So here's some I downloaded earlier this week for an upcoming Christmas concert we've got. And we see here we've got a few tenor predominant files. So they might be good teaching files, don't have to do anything with them. Just bundle them up and use them. This one isn't. What else have we got here? This one's a lovely Christmas piece with no teaching files available on the internet. Nothing at all. So we're ready to go. Just again, for the purposes of demonstration, let's download that little Christmas piece we saw. And in Reaper we do that by going to Insert, and we insert a media file. Now Reaper can handle any type of media file, MIDI file, WAV file, mp3, a whole bunch of different file formats, and it handles them all very, very well. So we just open media file and we go down to downloads and we find that lovely little piece and we double click on it. And there it is. Now we can navigate around the screen in Reaper by a variety of processes. The first one is this little slider down the bottom. That takes us gives us a different view of the file. We're looking at the front of it here, and we're looking at the back of it there. Now we might like to have it so that we can view the whole thing in one screen. So we use the zoom or the mouse wheel for that. So just mess around with the mouse wheel and you can see you can squish it right up with a zoom way out, and then mouse wheel up, and you get a much more manageable view of it. So we'll leave it at that. That looks good. Now you'll notice a couple of things about this file. First of all, it's stereo. It's got two lines, a right and a left channel. Don't worry about that. Stereo, mono, Reaper handles them all, and for our purposes it doesn't matter. You'll also notice some bar lines up here. Now because we've just dropped this file anywhere, and it could be in who knows what tempo, who knows what time signature, you can forget these bar lines. For our purposes, for what we want to do, bar lines up here are completely irrelevant, as is the tempo down there. This is arbitrarily 120 beats per minute. Doesn't make any difference, so we could ignore that musical side of things. This is just editing a file in isolation, no musical reference at all. We also notice that this file has got a size that goes about halfway up each vertical axis in this stereo space, and that's about where you want it. You don't want it tiny, just like that. You want it going up a good distance. But again, we can fiddle with that later. Now, what else can we do? We can move this cursor. So this is where the playback starts. So if we hit play now, it will start from the end of the piece. Not much use. So let's just bring it back to the beginning. And why don't we hit play now and just see what happens. So right away we can see this is a good quality piece of music. Choir is professional, it's recorded in a studio, it's the right tempo, it's the right key, and when we listen to the whole lot we can see that the arrangement of the lyrics, the verse and everything is bang on our piece. So this will make a perfect accompaniment backing for our teaching tape. So why don't we have a look at the issues that might arise on the first time you do this. Perhaps it isn't playing back, perhaps you're not hearing it, or perhaps the cursor isn't moving. Reaper just doesn't want to, Reaper freezes and doesn't like it. So sometimes you can just reboot Reaper or reboot your computer. Sometimes it's an issue of device drivers just aren't talking to each other. But other times you might have to go into options and preferences. And this is the beating heart of Reaper, where you go into the summary of your devices. So these are the way that the audio goes in, the audio comes out, and the way that it's processed in the middle. So straight away what we're aiming for here is the ASIO system. Remember you downloaded the ASIO for All driver? So we want to make sure that we're using ASIO software, not any of these other Windows bits and bobs, which are nearly, not completely, but nearly useless. So forget them. We want to make sure it's on ASIO. We want to make sure that the driver we're using is ASIO for All. Now ignore what I've got here. I'm using another piece of hardware and software, but what you want is ASIO for All. Okay, make sure it's doing that. Make sure that you've got microphones or something similar for an input. Make sure that you've got headphones or speakers or something similar for an output. Just experiment with them and make sure that you've got the right ones. That could be a cause of your issues. And then when you're happy you've got that right, just press OK. If you've still got issues, go back to the sound recorder and see if that's working. If the sound recorder is working and all your Windows sound settings, mixer settings and your sound choices are correct, then you shouldn't have any problems. If you've still got issues, go to one of the videos, Reaper Basics, setting it up, and you will eventually find the issues. If you don't, just give it up for a week or two, come back to it. Show it to one of your grandkids or whoever. It's usually something very, very simple. So we know that this has got a lovely sound, and we are now ready, just again to sort of show you how it works, to record a part. And I'm going to record the tenor part, starting from when the tenors come in for these 4 bars. Now we could do 8 bars, we could do 16 bars, we could do an entire verse, we could do the entire song. It's really up to you, but I find you get the best results technically if you break your piece down into small chunks, and typically that's between one breath to the next. Sometimes it's less than that, but that's a good starting point. If you're confident and you know your piece and you're good, you'll do it all in one go. The professionals on YouTube certainly do that. But for our purposes, let's just select with a left mouse click, dragging it across to before and after these 4 bars where the tenor part and the bass part join the women. So we've figured out the region we want to sing in. We've got our music ready there. We've listened to it a few times and sort of sung along to think, yeah, I've nearly got that right. So you'll do that a few times, and when you're happy, you can start recording. But first of all, we've got to set up a track to record on. So here's our accompaniment track. Now we're going to double click in here again. We'll make it nice and big just for ease of vision, and we'll double click in here and we'll call this tenor. Now, the track is ready. We've got a predefined space that we want to record in, and we've activated toggle repeat so that we'll be able to record as many takes as we want just of this 4 bars until we get a take that finally we think, oh, at last I got it right. There'll be 10 rubbish takes and 1 good one. But that's all right, you delete the 10 rubbish ones and no one will ever know. You'll just have 1 good or fairly good one, something that you can do something with. Now, before we can record, we have to arm the track, and that simply means we have to click on this red button, and you'll see straight away that the input from your microphone is going into Reaper. Reaper's seeing it and it's ready to record. Now at this point you might have to adjust a few volumes. You might be getting some crackling or feedback, or it might be screaming at you even. If it screams at you, then you are getting too much feedback. Just click stop, and you can also click record monitoring off. So that means the sound of your voice coming in has disappeared, and here it is back again. Now it's not there. So let's, for the purposes of just today, let's switch that off. You can experiment with what works for you. You might need to take your volume down a little bit, so you just turn this dial down a little bit, and usually you can get rid of background crackles and feedback and bits and pieces, so just mess around with that volume. Sometimes your Windows setting volumes have to be adjusted too, but typically if you mess around with this volume, you're nearly ready. You're just about ready. USB microphones are a bit better than the inbuilt mic, so if you possibly can, get a lapel mic or a mic attached to a set of headphones, or just something a little bit better than the inbuilt mic, but the inbuilt mic will do. As will recording this on a smartphone. If you don't want to record it into Reaper, you can just record it onto a smartphone and import it into Reaper, but that's a lot fiddlier and a lot messier, so I wouldn't recommend that. So let's click on record, and then we just press record and we'll go for as many takes as we think we need to have. So when Reaper's finished recording, that is, you press stop, or you can press the space bar. The space bar means play or stop. You can see that Reaper has given you a choice to save or discard all your takes. So you click on save, and here you are. You've got 4 takes. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now we can listen to them one by one. We can start with number 1, just highlighted. And what's that sound like? Luli, lula, luli, lula. What about this one? Luli, lula, luli, lula. What about this one? Luli, lula, luli. Okay, so the last one I deliberately messed around the timing, got the timing all wrong for the first 3 or 4 notes. And you can fix that. Later on I'll show you how to fix that. You can stretch and compress different parts of a file and get it to fix. But for the time being, I like take 3. That's the one I want to go for. So we'll delete the others by right-clicking on your mouse on the highlighted file and go to take. And we crop to active take. So there's a shortcut there, Alt-Shift-T, but crop to active take means that you ignore everything else outside the take that you've highlighted. And bingo, there you have it. And you can see this takes pretty good volume. It's not quite as loud as your backing, but it's not bad. So let's have another listen to it, only this time we'll get rid of the backing so that it doesn't blur our hearing of what we've recorded. So you can do that by just clicking on M for mute and then press spacebar or play. Luli, lula, luli, lula. So it's sort of not bad. It's a bit thin and it's a tiny bit out of tune, and there's a breath mark there, isn't there? So, you know, we don't want that breath mark, or maybe we do. Maybe we'd like to have some nice breaths in there so that you can learn by muscle memory where the actual breath marks that your choir master wants. So there are various ways to get rid of that if you want. But let's assume that we like this, and now we'll do the next few bars. So first of all, we'll hide the end of this one by left clicking when there's a little bracket appearing on the file, and we can just drag it across there, or we can drag it out that way and it repeats. But let's just hide a bit of that. Now we'll select a new section. We're going to sing this next 4 bars. We'll position the cursor at the beginning of those 4 bars. We'll unmute this. We'll sing along with it first, just to make sure we've got it right. Okay, why don't we try it? save all of those, and my hunch is that number 2 was the best. Bye bye, Lule. Okay, so we'll select this as the active take. And let's have a listen to it without the choir. So we'll mute the choir. Bye bye, Lule, Lule. Again, it's not quite good enough for me, but you know, for the purposes of demonstration, it'll do. Now you can see actually here there's a bit of a gap, and that weird little bit of waveform there is a plosive on a consonant. Bye bye bye. So we might not like that. I wonder if we can get rid of that. Bye bye. Yeah, there's a plosive there. It's only little, but you can do that. And I'll just show you since we're here and in the spot. So just a few little bar lines before that plosive, we can split this track by putting our cursor just before it. Now I should mention at this point that our bar lines have to be at the maximum resolution that Reaper can allow, so as we can get down to fine detail work like this. And you do that by going to the grid lines up here, and you right click and you make sure that you're on 1/128 rather than 1 on a quarter or 1 on an eighth. So these, remember, these bar lines are completely meaningless, but for the sake of editing they're handy and they're nicely tightly spaced. So we've clicked on the bar line we want. Then we can just press S for split, and you'll see straight away what Reaper's done is it split this file into two, the first half and the second half. And where they meet, it's tailed the volume down and then tailed the volume up. So this is a fade in and this is a fade out, and we can control those from the top corners of Reaper. See that little symbol there? That's a fade out symbol, and this is a fade in. Now automatically you can see here that the sound will dip to 0, so it's going to sound a little bit artificial if there's anything actually happening there. If there's silence you might be alright, but if there's anything happening then it will sound a little, you'll just feel this little click and you'll hear it. We can fix that out later, but for the time being let's see if we can just make that plosive sound a lot softer. And you can see already that plosive's a lot softer, but it's also softening out this waveform here. It's because the plosive's only just a few milliseconds. So you can go up here, when you get this little fade in symbol, you can right click and you can pick a different shape of fade in. So we, for example, want something a bit more radical, something that'll really bounce out that plosive quickly and then very quickly go back up. So let's try something like this. Then you can see, yeah, it's not affecting the distant waveform, but it is messing around with that plosive. So what about that? What will that sound like if we just give it a little bit of treatment? So we'll zoom back out, we'll position the cursor, and we'll bye bye Lule. Bye bye. Bye bye. Sounds a bit artificial, but with backing you'll never tell. Maybe it's a bit radical. Why don't we just drag it back and give it a little bit more? And we've also noticed that there's a gap here, and I've cut that first note off early. So I wonder if we can do anything about that. Well, as it happens, we can. So first of all, we'll position the front of this exactly where we want in relation to the choir. So you can see actually I'm a little bit late, aren't I? Here's the choir coming in. If we unmute, you'll hear that I'm a little bit late, and we'll just be interested in just this small section here. So let's have a listen to that. Bye bye. Just a millisecond late. we'll get this little bracket here. When we see that, we'll left click and we'll drag it down so that it's nice and close to the beginning of my note. We'll give it a little bit of fade in. Now we have to drag it so that this starts at the same time as the choir. So the choir starts singing about there, don't they? So we'll just drag that up so we're coming in together. But now what we've done is we've made this gap even bigger. But we can do something about that. So the first thing we'll do is we'll again look for this little bracket and we'll drag that close to the end of my note, maybe a little bit closer. Now we can stretch this note so that it fills in this gap. So you literally elongate the length of that note without altering the pitch or the sound. If you try and do it too much, if you stretch it out by a factor of 2 or 3 or 4, it won't work. But just a 10 or 20% stretch normally is fine. So you press Alt, then left mouse, and you see that little hand appear, and that's a little stretch hand. So we'll take it maybe not quite up to there, but nearly up to there. And you'll notice it hasn't really affected the beginning of that. It's still pretty much on track. When you stretch it, the stretch starts from the very beginning of the file, so it will stretch the front of it backwards a little bit. So sometimes you have to do a tiny little that way. So let's just stretch that a little bit more. So you find the bracket, Alt turns it into a little fist, then we drag it a little bit that way. Now, if we're careful on how we overlap it, then we can see that we've got a fade in and fade out that overlap each other, and that's got a crossfade. And when you've got a good crossfade, you don't hear any glitches and pops and noticeable drops in sound which stand out. So this is a nice crossfade, but since it's crossfaded, it's lost that more radical fade in that I put in before, because the crossfades have to match. And you can mess around with that crossfade and make it longer or shorter. So why don't we just give it a bit of crossfades to do a bit with that plosive. So we'll leave it at about that and see what that sounds like. And back here we'll bring that, so click and drag, left click and drag when you see that little bracket, and we'll give it a little left click and drag, a little bit of fade down. And what about the timing of all of this in the last half of this file? Is it pretty good or not? Let's see. It's pretty good, isn't it? Sometimes you can actually see. See, there's the loos for the choir, and there's my loo, very close. And there's the lays probably just there. Maybe that's the lay there. So it's very close. And what about the finish? So finishing's pretty good too. Now this choir's got a lot of reverb, so it can be very hard to exactly get the timing of the end notes. So you have to use just a little bit of judgment and toing and froing. So now, are we pretty happy on the whole lot? Now you remember that this initial 4 bars we did, we dragged the end of it back so that we had room to have a run up to the next section. So now we can drag that back, and we really want a nice crossfade there, don't we? So let's just drag that over and make a nice crossfade. And again, do we want the breath? I don't think we want the breath, do we? No, I don't think we do. It's the beginning of a piece, we don't want that horrible breath. So there's several things you can do there. You can do this crossfade thing and get rid of the breath, that can work. Or easiest, just get the little bracket, no alt, don't want a little fist, just left click and drag it so that we're nice and close to the beginning, and we put in a little fade. And we can see here that I'm a bit late, can't we? Yeah, I'm late, look at that. But the rest of it's pretty good. Yeah, the rest of it's good. It's just that first note. In fact, the next Lee is actually pretty good, isn't it? There and there. Almost perfect. Maybe I'm still a little bit late, but most of the delay is just these first few milliseconds. So what are we going to do about that? If we stretch this file out that way, then we'll stretch all of it out. We might get the this first bit right, but we'll get all of this a little bit wrong. If we just shift the file, if we drag the whole thing to make these match, then the rest of it will be wrong. So what we need to do is just stretch this first note. So let's find out where the second note is, and you can see that's just there. So we're going to split this file, not this file, so you make sure that this one is highlighted, and we press S for split. Now what we're going to do is just drag this, elongate it, stretch it. So we've got the little bracket, Alt, there's our little fist, and left click and drag, and we're stretching it out so that it matches just nicely there. Now we have to go back and make sure that this crossfade is good. See, the crossfade here is a volume dip, so that's no good. So what we can do is we can either drag this one over. So we've stretched this one, so we might just drag this one over a little bit to give us a crossfade. Now sometimes your crossfade can be really short like that and it can work well. Sometimes it's better a little bit longer. You just have to experiment. I would probably just try it first as a really short one, and let's see what it sounds like. So this is the section we're interested in. We'll put our cursor right there at the beginning, and let's press play. Luli, lula, luli, lula. Bye bye, luli, lula. So that bye we stretched, that didn't sound very good, did it? No, we're not very impressed with that. So let's just unstretch it a bit. Maybe we just overdid that a bit. So we get the little bracket, we press Alt, and let's just pull it back a little bit and see what that sounds like. Bye bye. Bye bye. So let's see if we can hear that a bit better. We'll mute our choir. See how that sounds. Bye bye. Bye bye. Scooped a bit there, haven't we? I'd do that again, but we'll leave it for time being. Bye bye, Luli. Bye bye. That's a bit more natural. The gap is actually sounds better with a bit of a gap there, doesn't it? And we've nearly got rid of that plosive. Let's just drag that a little bit more, make that bye a little bit softer. Bye bye, Luli, lule. Okay. So I'm going to say that I'm pretty happy with that. And at this point you can either leave it sort of semi-unfinished there and go on and complete the rest of the song, or what you can do, and what I tend to do, is glue all of this together. So undo those splits and just glue it all together. So you right mouse and select all of those files with their splits. Then you just right mouse click, and there it says glue. So it just glues it all together. And all those splits are gone. Now you only really want to do that when you're confident you've got it right. And you know, as I said, I'm not quite happy with that yet. I'd actually retake all of this. But just for purposes today, that's fine. So you've now got your first 8 bars all good to go. And although Reaper auto saves, I tend to, about every 10 minutes, I'll actually save it. So it's just like any other program, File, Save As. and you can save it in the location wherever you'd like, and you can save it however you want. Now you might like to save it as Lule Luli, or you might like to save it as Christmas Concert 2023, or however you want. Sometimes it's good to save each individual project with just one piece and then put them all together later. Sometimes it's good to just stack them all together in the one project and save it as Christmas 2023 or Extravaganza 2024 May, or whatever you want for your purposes. But you can see now we've nearly got something that's sort of vaguely reasonable anyway. Let's turn the volume of this up a little bit.
Bye bye, Luli. Luli, lula, luli, lula. Bye bye.
So one more thing we'll do just now, to introduce you to this concept. Sometimes it's nice to have your part in the right channel if you've got stereo headphones, and the accompaniment in the left. So what I tend to do as a general rule is I don't make it completely right and left, but I bias it. So you go up here to the pan control, and at the moment the accompaniment is going equal right and left. So let's make it sort of about 80% right. Generally that's what I go for. And then conversely, your part, let's make that about 80% left. Sorry, I've got the volume there. Let's make it about 80% left. And let's listen to that and see how that comes out.
Luli, lula, luli, lula. Bye bye, Luli, lule.
So that's not bad, is it? Some people like it left and right biased, some don't. It's entirely your preference. But you can see here in a few minutes we've got a fair old stab at the initial part, a tiny little step on this first piece, and we can do it. You can do it. It can be done, and we've only just scratched the surface of what Reaper can do. That's it for today. Bye.